We give thanks to you, our Lord Jesus Christ, for giving the world the gift of a man called Francis. You built your church upon the rock of a man called Peter more than 2,000 years ago. And after 265 previous successors, we dare say that Pope Francis fits the shoes of that fisherman who spearheaded your church. Di man po karapat-dapat, Panginoong Jesus, ay pumasok sa aming munting bahay, kubong tahanan, ang inyong kinatawan dito sa lupa. Tulad ng isang dukhang may maliit na dampa na magkakaroon ng napakarangal na bisita, kami po lahat ay nagkumahog maglinis ng bahay, naghanda ng angkop na awit at kaunting sayaw ng aming mga kabataan. Nagpatayo dali-dali ng mga entabladong pangseremonya at buong pananabik na may halong kaba. Kaming naghintay sa pagdating ng mahal na Santo Padre. Magmula noong Enero 15 hanggang kahapon, Enero 19, 5 araw po kaming napuno ng kagalakan sa kanyang pagdalaw sa aming bansa. Panginoong Jesus, pangalagaan niyo po si Papa Francisco na lumawig ng napakatagal ang kanyang buhay. Nawa ay marami pang buhay ang kanyang mabigyan ng pag-asa at mapatibay ang pananampalataya. Alam po ninyo na kami ay nag-antay sa kanyang mga pangaral, ngunit madalas siya ang nakinig. Naghanda kaming humingi ng tawad sa aming mga pagkakamali, ngunit kuminsan ay siya pa itong humingi ng paumanhin. Humingi kami ng dasal sa aming mga kasalanan, ngunit hindi namin inasahan na siya pa ang humiling na siya ay ipagdasal. Hinahanap naming makapiling kayo, Panginoong Jesus, sa pamamagitan niya. Ngunit sabi niya ay narito kayo sa pagkatao ng mga bata at mahihirap at mga naaapi sa aming lipunan. Panginoon, palawigin po ninyo ang kalusugan ni Papa Francisco para sa kapakanan ng kapayapaan at pagpapatawad sa aming pamilya, sa Pilipinas at sa mundo. Tanggapin din po ninyo ang kaluluwa ng batang babae na si Cristel May Padasas na nag-alay ng kanyang buhay sa pagdating ni Papa Francisco sa Tacloban, Leyte noong nakaraang araw. This we ask in the name of Jesus our Lord. Amen.
Marami pong salamat, Senator Soto. The Secretary will call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano Alan Peter Compañero S., Cayetano P.I.S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito Enrile, Escudero Estrada, Gingona, Unasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marcos, Usmeña, Pimentel, Paul, Rector, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar, Senate President Trilon.
With 17 senators present, the Chair declares the presence of a quorum. Before we proceed with the business for the day, may the Chair, with the permission of the Chamber, suspend the session for 1 minute to enable us to greet our colleague, Senator Coco Pimentel, a happy birthday. Session is suspended. Session is resumed. Majority Leader.
Blessed New Year. Good afternoon, Mr. President. Mr. President, before I move to dispense with the reading, the mother of the birthday celebrant is also here with us today, Mrs. Bing Pimentel, and as my mother always reminds me, do not greet the celebrant. He did no hard work. Greet the mother because she did the whole the hard work. So happy giving birthday to Mrs. Pimentel. Sir President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the Journal of the 41st Session, December 7, 2014, and consider the same as approved.
Any objection? Hearing none. The reading of the Journal of Session number 41 on Wednesday, dated December 17, 2014 is hereby dispensed with, and the same is hereby approved on motion of the Majority Leader.
Sir President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Secretary will read the reference of business. With the permission of the Chamber, Mr. Majority Leader, may we avail of the valuable presence of our colleague to pass on third reading Senate Bill number 2419. So
Yes,
if
Mr. President, may I
if the
withdraw
Majority
my
Leader can kindly
motion?
withdraw the motion
Yes,
first.
I withdraw my motion to proceed with the reference of business. With the consent of our colleagues in the Senate, Mr. President, I move that we consider on third reading Senate Bill number 2419 under Committee Report number 78. This is the legislative bill on the judiciary independence enhancing, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration on third reading of Senate Bill number 2419 is in order.
Mr. President, with the consent of the body, may we request that Secretary to read only the title of the bill without prejudice to inserting into the Senate Journal and record the whole text thereof.
The Secretary is directed to do so.
Senate Bill number 2419, an act banning the reappointment of a regular member of the Judicial and Bar Council, JBC, who has already served 2 full terms.
Mr. President, copies of this measure as approved on second reading have been distributed to the members of the Senate last December 17, 2014, thereby complying with the 3-day rule found under Section 26, Paragraph 2, Article 6 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution. I thus move for a roll call vote, Mr. President.
The Secretary will conduct a roll call vote.
Roll call vote. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano Alan Peter Compañero S, Cayetano PIS, Defensor Santiago, Ejercito, Enrile Escudero Estrada, Gingona, Honasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marcos, Usmeña, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar, Senate President Trilon.
17 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention. Senate Bill number 2419 is hereby approved on third reading. Mr. Majority Leader,
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Secretary will read the reference of business.
Reference of business. Message of the House of Representatives. Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 15 December 2004 it passed the following House bills / House Joint Resolution in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate. House number 4041 entitled An Act Increasing the Bed Capacity of the Sinait District Hospital in Sinait, Ilocos Sur and appropriating funds therefore.
Committees on Health and Demography, Finance.
House number 4907, an act promoting positive and nonviolent discipline of children and appropriating funds therefore.
Youth, Women, Family Relations, Gender Equality, Finance.
House number 5260, an act declaring the province of Nueva Ecija a mining-free zone.
Environment and Natural Resources.
House number 5261, an act declaring the province of Biliran a mining-free zone.
Environment and Natural Resources.
House number 5262, an act declaring the city of Davao a mining-free zone.
Environment and Natural Resources.
House number 5267, an act regulating the practice of employers in posting notices of termination of employment of former employees in newspapers, social media, and other public information venues.
Labor, Employment, and Human Resource Development.
House number 5268, an act protecting seafarers and other workers against ambulance chasing and providing penalties for violation thereof.
Labor, Employment, and Social Resources Development.
House number 5276, an act increasing the bed capacity of Vicente Soto Memorial Medical Center located in Cebu City from 800 to 1,200 beds and appropriating funds therefore, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 8658 entitled An Act Increasing the Bed Capacity of Vicente Soto Memorial Medical Center located in Cebu City from 400 to 800 bed capacity and appropriating funds therefore.
Health and Demography, Finance.
House Number 5280, an act decriminalizing premature marriages, repealing for the purpose Article 351 of Act Number 3815 as amended, otherwise known as the Revised Penal Code.
To the Archives.
House Number 5281, an act authorizing the court to require community service in lieu of imprisonment for the penalty of arrest to minor, amending for the purpose Chapter 5, Title 3, Book 1 of Act Number 3815 as amended, otherwise known as the Revised Penal Code.
Justice and Human Rights.
House Number 5283, an act strengthening further the functional and structural organization of the Sandigan Bayan, further amending Presidential Decree Number 1606 as amended and appropriating funds therefore.
Committee on Rules.
House Number 5288, an act instituting reforms in real property valuation and assessment in the Philippines, reorganizing the Bureau of Local Government Finance and appropriating funds therefore.
Ways and Means, Local Government Finance.
House Joint Resolution Number 26, entitled Joint Resolution Increasing the Daily Subsistence Allowance of all officers, enlisted personnel, candidate soldiers, probationary second lieutenants, cadets, and civilian active auxiliaries of the Armed Forces of the Philippines AFP, commissioned and non-commissioned personnel of the Philippine National Police PNP, Bureau of Fire Protection BFP, Bureau of Jail Management and Penology BJMP, cadets of the Philippine National Police Academy PNPA, Philippine Coast Guard PCG, the candidate Coast Guardmen of the PCG, and the uniformed personnel of the National Mapping and Resource Information Authority NAMRIA from 90 pesos to 150 pesos per day effective January 1, 2015.
Committee on Rules.
Bills on first reading. Senate Number 2519, entitled an act improving access of persons with disability to public and private facilities, amending for the purpose Republic Act Number 7277, otherwise known as the Magna Carta for Disabled Persons, by Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy Espinay.
Social Welfare, Social Justice, Welfare, Rural Development.
Senate Number 2520, an act exempting farmer cooperatives and associations engaged in the trade of organic fertilizers from payment of registration, licensing fees, and administrative charges, granting amnesty for previous violations of Presidential Decree 1144, amending for the purpose Presidential Decree 1144 by Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay.
Agriculture and Food, Finance.
Senate Number 2521, an act granting paternity leave benefits to members of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay.
Defense and Security, Civil Service, Government Reorganization.
Senate Number 2522, an act expanding agricultural exemptions to the expanded value-added tax under Section 109 of the National Internal Revenue Code by Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay.
Ways and Means.
Senate Number 2523, an act granting financial and economic relief to solo parents, amending for this purpose Republic Act Number 8424, otherwise known as the Tax Reform Act of 1997, and for other purposes, Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay.
Women, Family Relations, Gender Equality, Ways and Means.
Senate Number 2524, an act mandating the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples to provide transportation, food, and non-monetary assistance to indigent litigants who are members of indigenous cultural communities while in attendance of hearings or proceedings in the NCIP by Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay.
Cultural Communities and Finance.
Senate Number 2525, an act augmenting survivorship benefits of heirs of soldiers who died in the line of duty before completion of 20 years of active service, amending for the purpose Presidential Decree 1044 amended, Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay.
National Defense and Security.
Senate Number 2526, an act clarifying the meaning of full-back wages by amending Article 271 of the Labor Code of the Philippines, and for other purposes, Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay.
Labor, Employment, Human Resource Development.
Senate Number 2527, an act securing the Philippines borders to make more effective the prohibition against the entry of illegal drugs into the country, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Public Order, Dangerous Drugs, Finance.
Senate Number 2528, an act to provide for uniform warnings on personal protective equipment for occupational use, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Labor, Employment, Human Resource Development.
Senate Number 2529, an act amending Article 874 of Republic Act 386, also known as the Civil Code of the Philippines, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Women, Family Relations, Gender Equality.
Senate Number 2530, an act criminalizing the failure of owners and lessors of residential and commercial buildings to comply with national and local fire safety laws. Senator Defensor Santiago.
Urban Planning, Housing and Resettlement, Justice and Human Rights.
Senate number 2531, an act providing for technical preparation education in public secondary schools and state colleges and universities by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Education, Arts and Culture, Finance.
Senate number 2532, an act amending Section 28 of Republic Act number 9147, also known as the Wildlife Resources Conservation and Protection Act by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Environment and Natural Resources, Agriculture and Food.
Senate number 2533, an act providing that all educational institutions, whether public or private, shall hold mandatory consultation with students, parents or guardians, alumni, teachers, and other non-teaching personnel associations before increasing and or adding miscellaneous fees, other fees, and paid services by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Education, Arts and Culture.
Senate number 2534, an act to provide for digital education partnerships, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Education, Arts and Culture, Public Information, Mass Media, Finance.
Senate number 2535, an act establishing a job training program for mature or older workers, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Labor, Employment, Human Resources Development, Social Justice, Welfare, and Rural Development.
Senate number 2536, an act to provide for a more detailed and uniform disclosure by credit and charge card issuers with respect to information relating to interest rates and other fees which may be incurred by consumers through the use of any credit or charge card, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Trade, Commerce, Entrepreneurship, Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies.
Senate number 2537, an act granting immunity from personal civil liability under certain circumstances to volunteers working on behalf of non-profit organizations and governmental entities by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Justice and Human Rights, Social Justice, Welfare, and Rural Development.
Senate number 2538, an act amending Presidential Decree number 1818, Section 1 on court jurisdiction, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Justice and Human Rights.
Senate number 2539, an act to authorize the Secretary of National Defense to establish a competitive program to make emergency preparedness planning and implementation grants to public schools located in areas under a high threat of terrorist attacks, natural disasters, or public health emergencies, Senator Defensor Santiago.
National Defense and Security, Education, Arts and Culture, Finance.
Senate number 2540, an act authorizing grants to promote media literacy and youth empowerment programs, to authorize research on the role and impact of depictions of girls and women in the media, to provide for the establishment of a national task force on girls and women in the media by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Public Information, Mass Media, Women, Family Relations, Gender Equality.
Senate number 2541, an act to require all public school employees and those employed in connection with a public school to receive NBI background checks prior to being hired, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Education, Arts and Culture.
Senate number 2542, an act to prevent mail, telemarketing, and internet fraud targeting senior citizens and to educate the public senior citizens, their families, and their caregivers about how to identify and combat fraudulent activities, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Trade, Commerce, Entrepreneurship, Social Justice, Welfare, and Rural Development.
Resolutions. PS Resolution number 1065, directing the proper Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the mandatory quarantine of overseas Filipino workers, OFWs returning from Ebola-stricken countries, Senator Maria Lourdes Nances Binay.
Health and Demography.
PS Resolution number 1066, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the report that 2.7 billion pesos in pork was wasted by local executives in 2013, Senator Defensor Santiago.
To the Committee on Local Governments.
PS Resolution number 1067, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the report that the operator of the Hong Kong Mass Transit Railway warned of the possibility of train derailment in Metro Manila's Metro Rail Transit Line 3, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Public Services.
PS Resolution number 1068, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the report that malnutrition is still prevalent among Filipinos by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Health and Demography.
Yes, Resolution number 1069, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the report that 70 million pesos worth of fake electronic gadgets and perfumes were seized by joint interagency government operatives by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Trade, commerce, entrepreneurship.
Yes, Resolution number 1070, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the reported need to bar the entry of armed entities into school grounds, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Education, arts, and culture.
Yes, Resolution number 1071, directing Ruby remained in evacuation centers 5 days after the storm battered the Philippines, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Local government.
Yes, Resolution number 1072, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the report that the Cagsawa ruins in Albay is in need of restoration, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Education, arts, and culture.
Yes, Resolution number 1073, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the report that overworked minors have been rescued from a Tondo factory by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Women, family relations, gender equality.
Yes, Resolution number 1074, a resolution directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the report that El Nido Beach is positive for coliform, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Environment and natural resources.
Yes, Resolution number 1075, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the report that tainted anti-rabies and hepatitis A vaccines are unregistered, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Health and demography.
Yes, Resolution number 1076, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the report that illegal structures owned by convicts have been built inside the New Bilibid prison, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Justice and human rights.
Yes, Resolution number 1077, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the reported persistence of human rights violations, especially by state agents, by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Justice and human rights.
Yes, Resolution number 1078, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the report that Filipinos have been used as human subjects in highly irregular trials for anti-malaria drugs by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Health and demography.
Yes, Resolution number 1079, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the reported involvement of policemen in the case of missing confiscated lumber in Occidental Mindoro, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Public order and dangerous drugs.
Yes, Resolution number 1080, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the report that the transfer of the oil depot in Pandacan could lead to higher fuel prices due to increased transportation and delivery costs, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Energy.
Yes, Resolution number 1081, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the report that the Philippines is one of 5 countries where murders, extrajudicial killings of land rights defenders are most prevalent, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Justice and human rights.
Yes, Resolution number 1082, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the feasibility of using mall parking areas as evacuation centers by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Local government.
Yes, Resolution number 1083, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the report that politicians are still meddling in biddings conducted by the Department of Public Works and Highways by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Accountability of public officers and investigations.
Yes, Resolution number 1084, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the report that a marine apprentice drowned at sea after being ordered to jump from MV LCP Mark Jason III by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Labor, employment, and human resources.
Yes, Resolution number 1085, congratulating the city of Bigan, Ilocos Sur for being named one of the new 7 wonder cities and commending the same for being a model for heritage conservation and utilization by Senator Cayetano P.
Rules.
Yes, Resolution number 1086, directing the Committee on Games, Amusement, and Sports and other pertinent committees of the Philippine Senate to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the alleged mishandling of our country's sports officials of the request of Grandmaster Wesley So to switch federations from the National Chess Federation of the Philippines, NCFP, to the United States Chess Federation, USCF, and on the dismal state of Philippine sports development, especially in providing high-level training to support our young talents and to address the concerns, problems, and or issues perennially affecting Philippine sports development by Senator Trillanes IV.
Games, amusements, and sports.
Additional reference of business message of the President of the Philippines. Letter of His Excellency President Benigno Aquino III, dated 17 December 2014, submitting for the Senate's consideration and concurrence the agreement between the government of the Republic of the Philippines and the Federal Republic of Germany for the avoidance of double taxation with respect to taxes on income and on capital, which was signed on 9 September 2013 in Berlin, Germany.
Foreign relations.
Message of the House of Representatives, letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 17 December 2014 it adopted Senate number 1647 as an amendment to House number 5280 entitled an act decriminalizing premature marriages, repealing for the purpose Article 351 of Act number 3815 as amended, otherwise known as the Revised Penal Code.
To the archives.
Second, additional reference of business resolutions. Resolution urging the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the alleged overbooking of airlines and air traffic congestion at Ninoy Aquino International Airport, NAIA, which resulted to numerous flight delays and cancellations during the holiday season and inconvenience to hundreds of thousands of passengers by Senator Joseph Victor Ejercito.
Committee on Public Services.
PS Resolution number 1088, directing the Senate Committee on Justice and Human Rights and other appropriate Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the seizure of contraband items in the kubols of high-profile inmates during the New Bilibid Prison NBP raids conducted by the Philippine National Police, the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency, and the National Bureau of Investigation, as well as other related anomalies involving the NBP with the end in view of enacting remedial legislation that would prevent the recurrence of similar incidents. Senator Trillanes IV.
Justice and Human Rights, Public Order, and Dangerous Drugs.
Yes, Resolution number 1089, resolution directing the Senate Committee on Public Services and other appropriate committees of the Senate to investigate, inquire, and look into in aid of legislation the rate hikes implemented by Manila Water Company and Maynilad Water Services, the two water concessionaires primarily operating in Metro Manila, as approved by the Metropolitan Waterworks and Sewerage System, with the end in view of determining compliance of existing laws and enacting remedial legislation to protect the interests of consumers and the public in general, by Senator Trillanes IV.
Public Services.
PS Resolution number 1090, directing the proper Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the non-payment of toll fee on dates specified by the Department of Communication and Transportation during holiday season to prevent traffic congestion and long queues in toll plazas, and to provide a holiday incentive or treat to commuters contributing to the growth of the country's tourism industry, by Senator Soto III.
Public Services.
Yes, Resolution number 1091, directing the Senate Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations, Blue Ribbon, to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation into the alleged misuse of the Quick Response Fund by the Department of National Defense, with the end in view of determining the status of these funds intended to help victims of natural disasters, strengthening pertinent laws dealing with the use of public funds and for other purposes, by Senator Gingona III.
National Defense and Security.
Yes, Resolution number 1092, directing the proper Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the recent COA audit report on Typhoon Yolanda relief operations, that the Department of Public Works and Highways failed to use the 4.4 million cash donation from Sambo Engineering Corporation of South Korea, and failed to record 5.395 million pesos worth of donated goods. Senator Defensor Santiago.
Public Works.
Yes, Resolution number 1093, directing the proper Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the recent COA audit report that a substantial amount of the 352.5 million emergency funding of the Department of National Defense, DND, in 2013 had been allegedly misused by the military, by Senator Defensor Santiago.
National Defense and Security.
Yes, Resolution number 1094, directing the proper Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the reported unconscionable commercial practice of overbooking flights by Cebu Pacific Air during the holiday season, and its lack of preparation in accommodating its customers that resulted in thousands of stranded passengers from 24 to 26 December 2014, by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Public Services.
Yes, Resolution number 1095, directing the proper to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation, the findings of the Commission on Audit that the Land Bank of the Philippines extended loans to local government units, cooperatives, and private corporations and individuals without strictly complying with its own banking rules and policies, thereby exposing the bank to high credit risks and loss of interest income. Senator Defensor Santiago.
Banks, financial institutions, and currencies.
Yes, Resolution number 1096, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the increased stray bullet incidents during the 2014 holidays and the failure of the Philippine National Police to promote responsible use of firearms. Senator Defensor Santiago.
Public order and dangerous drugs.
Yes, Resolution number 1097, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the alleged failure of the Land Transportation Office to revoke or cancel unclaimed confiscated motor vehicle license plates and the increasing prevalence of confiscated plates that were renewed despite non-settlement of obligations. By Senator Defensor Santiago.
Local government.
Public services.
Sorry. Can we change the chair made an error? It should be PS Resolution 1097 should be referred to the Committee on Public Services.
Yes, Resolution number 1098, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation, the recent COA report that the Department of the Interior and local government failed to utilize more than half of the 76 million peso fund allocated for its disaster risk reduction and management activities. By Senator Defensor Santiago.
Local government.
Yes, Resolution number 1099, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation, the failure of the National Food Authority to maintain its required buffer stock to effectively implement control procedures in the distribution of rice and to immediately repair damaged warehouses based on a recent COA report on Typhoon Yolanda relief operations. By Senator Defensor Santiago.
Agriculture and food.
PS Resolution number 1100, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the recent Commission on Audit report that victims of typhoons have been denied access to decent shelters and other social services due to issues surrounding the implementation of relief and rehabilitation efforts of the DSWD. By Senator Defensor Santiago.
Social justice, welfare, and rural development.
Yes, Resolution number 1101, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the recent COA report that the conditional cash transfer program of the DSWD in 2013 was riddled with ineligible beneficiaries, double payments, and unpaid grants. By Senator Defensor Santiago.
Social justice, welfare, and rural development.
Yes, Resolution number 1102, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation and the issues concerning the contract awarded to Smartmatic for the refurbishment of the precinct count optical scan PCOS machine. Senator Defensor Santiago.
Electoral reforms, people's participation.
PS Resolution number 1103, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the report that an 8-year-old girl was sexually assaulted inside the New Bilibid prison. Senator Defensor Santiago.
Justice, human rights, youth.
Yes, Resolution number 1104, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the report that there have been almost 500 new HIV cases in the Philippines in November 2014. By Senator Defensor Santiago.
Health and demography.
Yes, Resolution number 1105, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the fare hike implemented by the Light Rail Transit and the Metro Rail Transit. By Senator Defensor Santiago.
Public services.
Yes, Resolution number 1106, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the reported hike in fees collected by the two biggest water concessionaires in Metro Manila. By Senator Defensor Santiago.
Public works.
Yes, Resolution number 1107, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the report that cargo containing medicine have been stolen from a pharmaceutical company in the Philippines. By Senator Defensor Santiago.
Health and demography.
Yes, Resolution number 1108, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the report that Batangas hog farms dumped manure into the Taal Lake. By Senator Defensor Santiago.
Environment and natural resources.
Yes, Resolution number 1109, directing the Senate Committee on Justice and Human Rights and other appropriate Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the prevalence of crimes in the New Bilibid prisons and the so-called luxurious living of some of its inmates that were discovered after raids were conducted in the NBP recently, with the end in view of assessing the capacity of our prisons and correction system, reviewing the functions of the Bureau of Corrections, the Bureau of Jail Management and Penology, and all other concerned reformatory agents of the government, and revisiting our laws, policies, and rules on corrections, penology, and jail management by Senator Pimentel III.
Justice and Human Rights.
PS Resolution number 1110, urging the elected leaders of the country and our people themselves to heed the call of Pope Francis to live simply and in outstanding honesty, integrity, and commitment to the common good, so that together we can do justice to everyone and serve the least of our brethren in commemoration of the Year of the Poor by Senator Pimentel III.
Rules.
Yes, Resolution number 1111, expressing the sense of the Senate in recognizing the enduring friendship and dynamic bilateral relations of the Republic of the Philippines with the Republic of Korea, and expressing gratitude to the Korean people and their government for their continuing contribution to the national development of the Philippines by Senator Drilon.
Rules.
Yes, Resolution number 1112, directing the proper Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the circumstances leading to the alarming increase of crimes against journalists with the end view of expediting the investigation and resolution of these cases by Senator Paolo Benigno Bami Aquino IV.
Justice and Human Rights, Public Information, Mass Media.
PS Resolution number 1113, directing the appropriate Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the imposition of fines and penalties by Civil Aeronautics Board on erring airlines with the end view of amending the provisions of Republic Act number 776, otherwise known as the Civil Aeronautics Act, Senator Paolo Benigno Bami Aquino IV.
Justice and Human Rights. Public Services. Public Services.
PS Resolution number 1114, directing the Committee on Accountability of Public Officials and Investigations of the Senate of the Philippines with the request that it be referred to the subcommittee to investigate in aid of legislation the alleged irregular transactions entered into by the Home Development Mutual Fund, Pag-ibig Fund, and the Boy Scouts of the Philippines under the leadership of Vice President General Binay as Chair of the HDMF/Pag-ibig Board of Trustees and as President of BSP, respectively, and other related anomalies with the end in view of enacting remedial legislation and to recommend amendments to the appropriate procurement laws and laws governing the transactions of government-owned and controlled corporations to ensure the proper use of public funds, introduced by Senator Trillanes IV.
Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigation. Tapos na? Tapos na? The Majority Leader.
Mr. President, may we acknowledge Senator Marcos to make a manifestation.
Senator Marcos is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, on the 18th of December 2014, just before the break, I wrote you a letter, and I copy furnished certain members of the Senate, in which I made the observation that the proposed BBL or Bangsamoro Basic Law contains several provisions which may contradict the Constitution. And in view of that, I had recommended that the third referral of the bill be made to the Committee on Constitutional Amendments, Revision of Codes and Laws, chaired by Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago. So I would like to request the chair for their action on this recommendation that I made.
Will the good senator from Ilocos Norte put that into a motion? And
Yes, sir. May I thank you, Mr. President.
For purposes of a third referral?
I would then move that the third referral of the Bangsamoro Basic Law be made to the Committee on Constitutional Amendments, Revision of Codes and Laws, chaired by Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago. So moved, Mr.
For the Majority Leader?
No objection, Mr. President.
There being no objection, the motion of Senator Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is carried.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
Senator Soto?
may I know what are the three committees that that was referred to?
Majority Leader, what are the three committees to which this was referred?
This referred, yes.
The committee on, if the chair recalls correctly, the committee on local government as the head committee, the committee on peace and unity as the
Peace
second
and
committee, and now with the motion duly approved, the third committee is the committee on constitutional amendments with the permission of the chamber.
Don't we have a rule concerning the the numbers
We
of
do,
committees?
Mr. President, and
Yes.
upon clarification in the floor last year, as a general rule, we do not have a referral to a third party, to a third committee.
Unless
But the rules do provide that it is allowed. So unless there is a reason that will lead the chamber, very valid reason to lead the chamber for a third referral, we do not do it. Except in the cases of the Finance and Ways and Means that we often also include. In this case, because of the provisions of the proposed law, wherein some legal experts are already questioning the constitutionality, the primary committee chair, Senator Marcos, saw it fit that to include this committee so that, I guess, so that we can sort out the constitutionality of some of the provisions that are in the said proposed law.
so that means again, local government is the primary committee, and
Secondary,
then
peace and
Peace and unity.
peace and unity and the constitutional amendments.
That's correct.
When we are not violating the rules of the Senate by doing so, Mr. President,
we are not, Mr. President.
unless it is.
Diba?
May we read into the records the pertinent rule, Mr. President, because we can always forego one of the committees, like the peace and unification. You're talking about constitutionality already. The local government committee can well handle the.
Mr. President, if I may, it is also in the general conduct of the Senate, wherein when a committee has already begun hearings on a measure, that that measure cannot be referred to another committee away from the committees that have already conducted hearings. That is certainly the case with the committee that I chair, which is the Committee on Local Governments, and the committee of Senator Gingona. I found it necessary to make this recommendation and this motion today for the simple reason that it has become clear from our hearings that there is no way that we will avoid lengthy and profound discussions on the constitutional issues of the Bangsamoro Basic Law. Furthermore, for the information of the body, Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago had already intended and had manifested her intention to hear under her committee the constitutional issues that have been raised. And the reason that I bring it up now is simply because of time. Para hindi na tayo mag-antay na matapos ang trabaho ng local government at saka peace and reconciliation bago mapunta sa constitutional, baka hindi na tayo umabot sa deadline na binigay natin sa sarili natin na end of first quarter. Dahil ang katotohanan, end of first quarter, end of March, pero ang katotohanan, ang last day of session is March 18. Kaya medyo gipit tayo sa oras.
Sir President, to answer directly the question of the minority leader, Section 15 of our rules, although a measure covers subject matters falling within the jurisdiction of more than one committee, it shall be referred to not more than two committees, provided, however, that a motion for referral to a third committee shall be referred to the Committee on Rules, provided, and so forth, so on. But in the Rule 52, Mr. President, the unanimous consent to any action or proceeding may be given expressly or impliedly. That is why the manifestation and the motion of the senator from Ilocos, from the gentleman from Ilocos, was premised with the consent of the Senate. Meaning, if anyone objected, then I will move that it be referred to the Committee on Rules, but if everyone will give their consent, then it will be in accordance with our rule, Mr. President.
Well, it grieves my heart to object, Mr. President. So I will not, at this point, object. But why don't we consider removing one of the committees already, Mr. President, instead? Because how many committee hearings have they done already?
May I
The
answer
Peace and Unification Committee, so that we do not, we do not go against our rules. This is going to be a bad precedent. in the future. So might as well. How many hearings have they conducted already? The local government and peace.
Ordinarily, I would agree with the minority leader that we should just stick to two and remove. But in this case, the Committee on Peace and Unity has been working on this even before there was an agreement.
Yeah,
and
I know.
then the Committee on Local Governments has always been the committee that passes this kind of laws, even in 1996 when we had the during the time of President Ramos. So in this case, Mr. President, it'll be most difficult, or it will not be logical to remove any of the two. And the two committees that are there have requested the Committee on Constitutional Amendments because in the view of some of the constitutional experts and of some senators, the law might I'm not making a conclusion now, but in the view of some, might need a constitutional amendment, although there's an assurance from the palace and from the sponsors that the provisions are in fact constitutional.
I understand the point of the majority leader, Mr. President, and I agree. But what I'm saying is that if they have already conducted hearings, then probably the Committee on Peace is ready and finished. So that we do not go against the rule, then we continue with the hearings with the local government and the Constitutional Amendments Revision of Codes and Laws Committee.
For the information again of the gentleman from Quezon City, we have conducted jointly with the committee of Senator Gingona and my committee of local governments. We have conducted 3 out-of-town hearings jointly, and we have further 2 on February 4 and 5 in Jolo and in Zamboanga. That will be the totality of the hearings, out-of-town hearings, but we will also conduct hearings in Manila, in the Senate, beyond that. So that's that's what happened now. But the reason I brought it up was very simple. As I mentioned, there is the central issues of the Bangsamoro Basic Law are not administrative or political, although there are many of those. The central issues are the constitutional ones. And I had proposed this so that we could already begin to examine those issues in the sense we will be working in parallel, where the constitutional issues are already being discussed, and at the same time, we are already beginning to write the committee report, especially on the administrative and the political issues that have been raised in the hearings.
Mr. President, may I ask for a 1-minute suspension?
Suspended for 1 minute.
Yeah, it is. There's no other way. There's no way around it. And we cannot do it. I don't know if it's
Sir President.
Session is resumed.
Sir President, since it's apparent that there are some questions, may I move for reconsideration? And may I move that the motion of the gentleman from Ilocos to have a referral to the Committee on Constitutional Amendments be referred to the Committee on Rules?
The previous vote, which referred the matter to the committee, which made a third referral to the Committee on Constitutional Amendments, is hereby reconsidered upon motion of the Majority Leader. And under the rules, the matter is hereby referred to the Committee on Rules for the appropriate disposition. Any objection? Hearing none.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, may we recognize Senator Pimentel to speak on a matter of public interest.
Senator Pimentel is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. My dear colleagues, it is said that no one truly knows a nation until one has been inside its jails. A nation should not be judged by how it treats its highest citizens, but its lowest ones. With these words, human rights and democracy icon, the late Nelson Mandela, reminds us that our countrymen in penal institutions equally deserve our attention and protection. Gone should be the notion that prisoners are criminals who deserve little or no sympathy at all. Guided by this same principle, the United Nations, in the Basic Principles for the Treatment of Prisoners, calls on state members to treat all prisoners with respect due to their inherent dignity and value as human beings. We too are called on to this challenge and must share in the responsibility of rehabilitating offenders, while at the same time upholding their dignity as human beings and providing for their social reintegration. Congress recently responded to this constant call through the enactment of Republic Act No. 10575, or the Bureau of Corrections Act of 2013. In this statute, we embrace the core ideal that the state must zealously promote the general welfare and safeguard the basic rights of every prisoner incarcerated in our national penitentiary system. In the same breath, the law affirmed our duty to strengthen government capability aimed towards the institutionalization of highly efficient and competent correctional services. It is also through this key piece of legislation that we endeavored to engender a paradigm shift in the manner we view our prison institutions and to treat it as part and parcel of the entire criminal justice system. Through this law, we sought to modernize, professionalize, and restructure the Bureau of Corrections, BUCOR, by upholding its facilities, increasing the number of its personnel, upgrading the level of their qualifications, and standardizing their base pay, retirement, and other benefits. Though laudable in its objectives, the Bureau of Corrections Act of 2013 addresses only one side of a larger picture and leaves much to be desired in the state of our countrymen who are presently detained, whether by final conviction or awaiting the outcome of their cases. Based on BUCOR's data, as of August 2014, its 7 penitentiaries have a total prison population of 40,185 inmates. Considering that the 7 penitentiaries have a total capacity of 16,000 inmates, this 40,185 count translates to a congestion rate of around 149%. The case of the New Bilibid prison, however, is more disconcerting, with an inmate population of roughly 22,800 for a facility that can only reasonably house 8,400. It alone has a congestion rate of 170%. This disturbing situation in our penitentiaries certainly falls short of the standard minimum rules for the treatment of prisoners, adopted by the First United Nations Congress on the Prevention of Crime and the Treatment of Offenders that prescribes, as far as practicable, sleeping accommodation in individual cells or rooms. The congestion in our national penitentiaries and other places of confinement under the jurisdiction of the Bureau of Jail Management and Penology is but one of the several issues that continue to hound our correctional system. Let me share with you some of the other key institutional issues in the correction system that were identified in the National Survey of Inmates and Institutional Assessment Final Report dated July 2003 that was undertaken by the Supreme Court in coordination with the United Nations. First, outdated, and dilapidated correctional facilities. In this regard, prisons and jails in the country are generally in poor condition. For instance, since the New Bilibid Prison's construction in 1935, there has been no major renovation of its facilities and administration building. Jails are similarly in dire need of proper maintenance and repair. The inadequate and poor maintenance of penal facilities have eventually led to the kubol system, where inmates are forced to share makeshift rooms among themselves. The sheer lack of adequate facilities and budget for the inmates' basic needs have also been linked to the proliferation of criminal activities within these institutions and to the rise of various gangs. Just very recently, we witnessed for ourselves how some inmates have unscrupulously taken advantage of the weaknesses of our penal system to gain unwarranted benefits and live like kings from within their cells, and worse, to perpetuate their wrongdoings not only inside but also outside their places of confinement. Readily, therefore, the need to improve our outmoded and dilapidated correctional facilities cannot be overemphasized. Second, the existence of functional overlaps and diffusion in the conduct of corrections and restoration activities. There are several agencies which are concerned with similar correction and rehabilitation functions. For example, the Department of Justice, Department of Interior and Local Government, Department of Social Welfare and Development, and local governments have similar mandates relative to the management and supervision of prisons, jails, and rehabilitation centers. This should impel us to reassess the present setup and to determine if integrating the functions of all these government agencies will better serve the ends of a more efficient correction system. Third, lack of information technology and expertise. The study found that the lack of technology to properly maintain the inmates' records and process documents for their release have been an ongoing problem. Fourth, the need to improve overall management capacity and resources. Improving administrative management capacity and resources of agencies involved in the correction system directly impacts on its capacity to develop policies, programs, and projects for correction and rehabilitation of offenders, tackle congestion in jails and prisons, and for effective operations management and strategic planning. Moreover, the increase in the number of guards assigned to our penal facilities has not risen commensurately with the number of detainees. Thus, it is no surprise to see that from a guard-to-inmate ratio of 1:39 in 1994, this figure has almost doubled to a guard-to-inmate ratio of 1:66 in just 20 years. The special needs of certain inmates are also continuously being neglected. Specifically, for instance, women inmates who are pregnant are confined in facilities that do not meet the basic standards necessary to protect them and their newborn's safety and health. This calls to mind the case of Andrea Rosal, who was detained at a cramped cell inside the NBI headquarters while she was in her full term. During her confinement, Andrea complained of abdominal pains but was only allowed to see a doctor 2 days after her arrest. Andrea was eventually transferred to another facility in Camp Bagong Diwa in Taguig City, but had to share her cell with 24 other female detainees. This case alone is illustrative of how we fall short of our international commitments, such as the United Nations rules for the treatment of women prisoners and non-custodial measures for women offenders, prescribing, among others, that pregnant prisoners must receive advice on their health and be provided with a healthy environment conducive to their delicate condition. Fifth, unattractive compensation, emoluments and benefits, and inadequate training. Inadequate training has consistently been cited as one of the many reasons for inefficiencies and deficiencies in the correction system. I am pleased, however, that we now have Republic Act number 10575 to specifically attend to this issue. Apart from the physical infrastructure of our penal facilities, we must also draw attention to our inmates' living conditions. Currently, our inmates are allocated 50 pesos each as subsistence allowance per day, and another 5 pesos each per day as medicine allowance. Though the total subsistence allowance per prisoner of approximately 18,250 pesos per year has been considered more than the national per capita poverty threshold of 18,157 pesos, which is based on 2011 figures. This highlights that delays in our criminal justice system ultimately leads to greater costs and loss to our government coffers. Introducing reforms to our correctional system invariably leads to improvements in our criminal justice system. As one of its 5 pillars, the correction pillar must constantly adhere to the principle of rehabilitation by implementing programs and interventions that will prepare the offenders to become productive members of society upon their release. The same National Survey of Inmates and Institutional Assessment Final Report recommends that these rehabilitation programs include: 1. Provisions for opportunities to develop proper work skills and acquire education and training, which will translate into economic self-sufficiency upon release, thus reducing the possibility of recidivism. Number 2, engagement of inmates in meaningful work assignments, particularly in penal farms and other productive labor, thereby helping defray the tax burden of their incarceration. And number 3, provision of counseling, life skills training, and spiritual guidance services to give inmates opportunities to take new directions in their lives. This same study emphasized the role of the community in the process of restoration and reintegration of offenders. For instance, the community can be tapped to monitor parolees and to enforce standards of behavior. Accordingly, efforts in engaging citizens for community corrections as an alternative measure to imprisonment and in implementing restorative justice must be intensified as a means of decongesting and cutting costs in maintaining prisons and jails. These efforts to improve the infrastructure of our correction system should nevertheless not blind us from the harsh realities that our inmates face on a daily basis. Many of them, if not most of them, live in substandard human conditions, which are violative of Article 3, Section 19, Paragraph 2 of the 1987 Constitution. These conditions are not conducive to their reformation, but are also detrimental to their own health and well-being. Our inmates also have very limited access to legal services and sometimes are not even aware of their rights under the law. This, compounded by the delays that come with the administration of justice, therefore present greater challenges for us as we forge ahead in our campaign to overhaul our entire criminal justice system. As we begin this new year, let us commit ourselves again to the unfinished task at hand. Though we have made significant progress, may our accomplishments only further fuel our desire to bring about genuine and lasting reforms that will center on our incarcerated countrymen. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Hello. Sir President, will the gentleman yield to one or two questions and a suggestion?
Well, with pleasure, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, let me congratulate him that on his birthday, he chose to speak on this matter. In fact, in many of my birthdays, I spend it in the maximum detention in the Camp Bagundiwa, Taguig City Jail, and in the Taguig, in the Metro Manila City Jail, Taguig City Jail, and the maximum, which are all in Camp Bagundiwa. I live just behind that. And I agree with what you've said, Mr. President, and the gentleman, a human rights advocate. And in search of solutions, just let me play the other side, no? Of course, some people will say, Your Honor, Mr. President, that tama yon, pondohan natin ang husto, pero tandaan mo, dahil may ginawa silang kasalanan o krimen, especially those sa convicted na, the more money that you give to them, marami ding gutom, marami din hindi nag-aaral, marami ding sumunod sa batas, sa kanila mo babawasan ng pera na yon at ibibigay. It's the same debate because in the same compound, Camp Bagundiwa, they have a rehab. No? And yun parati ang debate. Do we give more money and help those who are already drug addicts because in the philosophy that they are actually victims, eh. 'Di ba? Hindi naman sila criminal kung hindi ano. Or do we put more money in prevention and give more money to those people who disciplined themselves and did not try drugs? So I know you heard all of these arguments, no? I have some data here that the BGMP budget for 2015 is 6.7 billion pesos. For Bucor, it's 1.8 billion pesos, no? I do also have numbers. The latest is 2012 that BGMP has 72,000 inmates. Does the gentleman have information from the Bucor, from the National Penitentiary? Ilan ho ba yung nakakulong sa kanila? Hindi po ako nakakuha sa DOJ, ano?
The figures I gave you, Mr. President, are actually the Bucor figures. So our 7 penitentiaries under the Bucor's jurisdiction have a total prison population of 40,185 as of August 2014.
40,185. Tapos BGMP po, tama ba yung sa akin na 72,000 or nadagdagan na yon? Kasi end of 2012 pa yon, eh. For the purpose of our...
Yes, we do not have at the moment the BGMP, but I think that's the more fluid figure,
For the
Mr.
purpose-
President, because people are arrested on charges will be under the BJMP.
For the purposes of our discussion, Mr. President,
What
would you
is
allow...
your figure? 70?
72,000?
Yes, okay. We will just double check.
72,934. But just for the purposes of our discussion, Mr. President, can we use the number 73 or 75,000, no? So I was just thinking, Mr. President, no? If there are 75 plus 40,000, so 115,000, no? 115,000 inmates. And we're spending 8.5 billion, no? 8.5 billion pesos divided by 115,000. That's 7,391 divided by 365 days. Tama po ba? So we're only spending 20 pesos a day. Kung tama po yung aking math, gumamit na ako ng calculator. Let me double check. 8.5 billion.
Dapat 55.
8.5 billion divided by 115,000. 115,000 kasi 75,000 sa BGMP, 40,000 sa inmates. That's 73,000. Sorry, divided by 365, 202 pesos a day. So actually 202 pesos a day is much more than what many of our kababayans are making. So one of the things I was going to ask Mr. Chair is that Mr. President, how does our chairman of the Committee on Justice feel about having creative solutions. For example, why not allow a profit or non-profit group outsource and take over our jails rather than letting government do it themselves if they're not doing a good job?
As chairman of the Committee on Justice and Human Rights, I am willing to think outside of the box to solve this problem. Mr. President, you arrived at your figure by looking at the total budget, dividing it by the number of inmates. But if we check the law, I think we are, as I mentioned in my speech, allocating 50 pesos each, so per head, 50 pesos subsistence allowance per day, and another 5 pesos per day as medicine allowance.
Yes,
so, 55 times 30 natin.
Yes, Mr.
Ilan
President,
yun?
because we are paying for the electricity, the personnel and everything. So the total budget,
Yes.
I just put it together, equals 200 a day. The reason I say that is because a typical family of 5, if you spend 200 a day per family member, that's 1,000, you have to make 30,000 pesos para pantayan yung budget ng BGMP at Bucor. So, relatively to people na nakalaya, malaki ang budget natin per per inmate. But, pag na-convert na, pag gobyerno yung gumawa, as you said, unang-una, mababa din ang sweldo ng mga taga-BGMP at mga jail guard natin. No?
Yes.
It's between 13 to 18,000 lang ang starting nila. No? So, hindi kataka-taka na may temptation dun sa mga magbibigay sila ng malaking pera because they cannot feed their family with 15 to 18,000. No? So, I was just trying to elicit or to get from the gentleman, the good chairman of the Committee on Justice, who've been studying this issue not only from the point of view of yung issue sa National Penitentiary, pero all sides. The families, the society, how just our society is, how we treat prisoners. The prisoner itself, do we look at him as a criminal or do we look at him as someone to be punished or to be rehabilitated? And other countries have started outsourcing, bidding out jails,
Yes,
no? And it has produced some good results, no?
I think there are models in the United States.
Yes, and there are hybrids, meaning the warden can still be a part of the DOJ or the BGMP, but the jail itself and the personnel are actually bidded out to the private sector or to NGOs. No?
Yes. Yes, I am aware of such practices, and maybe we can study some of the states in the United States how they do it.
Yes. I bring it up, Mr. Chair, because sometimes it's so hard to have reforms from the government level because if you do it in the DOJ and the Bucor, our teachers, our health workers, all of them will say, but we also need resources, we also need. But with the 8.5 billion, and 8.5 billion is only the yearly allocation. If you look at the National Penitentiary, yung sa Bilibid, no, sa Muntinlupa, that property is tremendously valuable. No, I think even if you 1/4 or 1/8 of that, you make it part of the deal or a PPP, you will have money for maybe 5 years or 10 years to improve our jail system, Mr. Chair. No?
That's correct, Mr. President. And this is my opinion. No? Even if you look at the cost, as far as the National Penitentiary is concerned, if we relocate the one in Muntinlupa, we have to invest a big amount, but this will be, and hopefully this should be a one-time expenditure. So my point is, it's timely that we take a look at this course of action to once and for all address the subhuman condition, because
yes.
hindi lang po ito awa, nakakaawa sila. As lawyers, we are violating the Constitution.
Yes.
That's the point.
Yes.
So hindi lang po awa, but we are also aware that we are violating our own Constitution. We are violating international commitments.
that is why when there's discussions about special treatment for VIPs, I think the issue is not why do we allow known personalities to be able to go to the hospital or to get leaves. The question is, why aren't all the inmates allowed to have a physical checkup or to go to the medical institutions, because that's part of their human rights, their right to life, no, and to the quality of life, Mr. Chair. No?
That's
Mr. Chair, you mentioned also rehabilitation, and it's funny because one of the leading countries when it comes to rehabilitation is actually Saudi Arabia. So usually po kasi sa Pilipino, pag sinabi mong Saudi, alam na stricto eh.
Yes.
Pag nagnakaw, puto lang kamay, things like that. But apparently, they're so much into vocational training inside the jails, so that when they are released, they can get jobs. We actually have 3 ongoing projects together with TESDA, my office when we still had Pork Barrel, and the Taguig City Jail, the Cebu City Jail, and the Metro Manila Integrated Jail. We call it Bilibid IT. It's a joint project of my office, TESDA, IT schools, and the Bilibid. So we work with inmates that will be out 3 years or less, and we give them courses, BPO, computer, repairs, no? And it has encouraged a lot of inmates actually na magtino, na makikita silang future. Sir President, may I ask if the gentleman is also proposing that in fact this be a SOP or this program, that this be an integrated part of rehabilitation, that when you're in jail, you have an option to improve yourself.
That's correct, Mr. President. And in my speech, I said I'm glad that we already have Republic Act number 10575, that it mentions the reformation of national inmates. Ang daming programs po rito, moral, spiritual, educational training, work, livelihood, sports, recreation, health, welfare, behavior modification program, and we even have there is even a directorate for external relations responsible for pre-release and post-release programs for inmates. But
it's only on paper.
You finish my sentence. The law is very nice on paper. That's why we have to exercise our oversight function, ask Bucor which of the mandates they have been able to comply with, fulfill, and then those which have not been implemented, why? What's the reason?
That's the last 2 points, Mr. President, that I wanted to make. The issue in the Bilibid is not that there were musical instruments and that there were, a mini concert inside. The issue was that because he is a rich and powerful drug lord, he was given all the conveniences and abuso na, lumampas na. But I don't think people would object if there is a very humble music class or teaching inmates to channel their energy to arts, music, to education, to there are a lot of jails that have handicraft projects. But in this case, pagka sobrang yaman, may jacuzzi ka, pwede ka magdala ng mga artista or mga entertainers, pwede ka magkaroon ng parang mini bar sa loob ng or mini concert hall. Pero yung mga inmate na walang-wala, they get 0 programs or they only get the programs on paper. Is that the point you're driving at also, Mr. Chair?
Part of the mandate of Bucor would be to have programs for the reformation of our national inmates. An example is among those I've mentioned is kunyari sports and recreation program. So let's say music classes or concerts would be a recreation program. But what is wrong there in what we have discovered is that the institution abdicated its responsibility, pinasa sa inmate.
To the inmate.
Si inmate ang may studio, music studio. Dapat si institution ang may music studio kung gusto niya.
That's right.
Right. So, well,
and it should be available to everyone.
Yes.
No?
But before we go to the music studio, you have to look at the toilets first. So, ganun muna, priorities first. But well, it was abdicated, bahala na kayo dyan, and then, so,
Which goes to my last point, Mr. Chair, na I do admire Secretary De Lima for exposing what's happening there, for her inspections and everything. But for the last 22 years that I've been a legislator, from when I started as a municipal councilor, a legislator in our town, until now as a senator, every year or every other year, meron talagang issue sa Bilibid. Nakakatakas, may lumalabas, may nagdadala ng hindi naman conjugal, girlfriend o boyfriend visits, may drugs, may cellphone, may computer. Every year may ganun eh. And you mentioned a while ago IT and training. Isn't it true that with Wi-Fi and technology, all you have to do is put CCTVs? And usually in jails, ang wala lang naman CCTV, yung CR. Pero kita pa rin ng jail guard. But everywhere else, meron.
Yes.
So, I mean, why would we need surprise inspections kung napakamura na ngayon ng CCTVs at paglalagyan na lang natin lahat ng jail, and then naka-Wi-Fi yon pati sa office ng secretary, office ng USEC, sa NBI, sa PNP, etc., para makita kung wala o hindi. So, the point I'm driving at, Mr. Chair, is that, Mr. President, is that I agree totally with your privilege speech, but I cannot see why every year we have the same issue, and every year it just gets worse, no? From a private bathroom to now a private jacuzzi. But that could have all been solved by technology, which doesn't really cost that much anymore now.
Well, one thing that the raid and the pictures proved is that our jailers are not in control of their jails. Imagine the jailer or the Secretary of Justice, when she enters the penitentiary, she has to be protected from the inmates. Nakita mo ba yung picture that she was surrounded by bodyguards in your own jail? So even if there is probably a program to install CCTV cameras, then after the technicians leave, they will cut the wires. Because they are who is in control of the premises?
Yes,
Yan ang tanong.
No, let me agree with you, but to answer your question, we'll cut the wires. That's part of the penal system. I mean, we all watch movies, di ba? And that's why there's a punishment system even within the jail. That's why meron yung ina-isolate ka or, di ba, sa magagandang jail kasi, you have exercise time, sun time, etc. Pag hindi ka good behavior, meron kang papanood ng TV. Because sa atin, dahil wala lahat yon, wala silang, and then mababa ang sweldo ng mga nagbabantay. As you said, they have their own world. Yes. And it's still money that controls that world. But what I'm saying is that it can be solved, or at the very least, we can take steps so that it won't happen again. But by bringing the media there and exposing, and then palalamigin lang yung issue, but after 6 months, ganyan na naman mangyayari.
That's why, Mr. President, that on the very first session day of this year, the topic of my speech is our prison system, so that we will not forget, and then let's make this maybe one of our priorities. There will be big amounts involved, but as far as concerned, my hope is at least it's a one-time big investment to cure this the physical, at least the physical man lamang, the physical injustice of the physical premises, which also is a constitutional violation.
My last point, Mr. President, is that I've been to Palawan, to the Iwahi, to the colony, the penal colony there, and to my mind and my impression is that it's working. Doon kasi either dagat na hindi ka naman makakalangoy or malaria doon sa forest. So ang ginagawa lang nila 4 or 5 times a day may roll call. And then pag walang roll call, kanya-kanya, pero may livelihood, may nagsasaka, and you know, it's if you look at the city jails, Manila, Quezon City, Makati, Taguig, etc. If you look at the DOJ, the Bilibid, and you look at the penal colony, ang layo. At yung penal colony, meron talagang, despite the meager funds, I think they have even less funds than Bilibid, makikita mo yung element ng rehabilitation. So, I just like to stop on to end on a positive note that despite the meager resources, you know, ang Pilipino ay isang lahi na may pag-asa, isang lahi na optimistic, looking forward. And what they're doing in Palawan, you know, it's just there and people are not minding it, but actually may positive yun, and it can even be an example for the rest of the world, rather than us keep looking at other countries, ano bang pwedeng gayahin dito. In our own country, I think, I haven't gotten an official report, no, and it's been some time since I visited there, but for me, just an ocular of the area, no, it's very impressive, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. So maybe another one approach would be more penal farm style, or there's even a proposal to regionalize the places where our inmates are being held, so that family members can visit them. Part of rehabilitation, they have visitors, at least regular visitors. So all of this, Mr. President, we are considering. We still do not know the best answer, but we will. The willingness to think outside of the box is here as your chairman, and please give your committee many ideas. The wilder the idea, the better.
I'm hoping that our authorities that deal with jails now would be as open-minded and as creative as our chairman. And let me again wish you a happy birthday. And
thank you, Mr. But we need to give them the legal basis for
Yes,
them to
that's
be
right.
to be creative also.
But as you said, Mr. Chair, as far as the rehab aspect is concerned, it's already in the law.
Yes.
But the facilities are not
Facilities
there,
po.
the program,
Pagdating po
etc.
sa facilities, money po yun. So it takes commitment from those who decide on who have the power of the purse, whether we will commit the amount or not.
Mr. President, may we recognize the minority leader?
Senator Soto is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, the Majority Leader. Thank you. Will the distinguished gentleman try to help me understand our penal system, Mr. President?
Yes, sir. And in the process, I also want to be helped.
My attention was caught by a point that you raised in your speech, which are you enumerated the key institutional issues in the correctional systems that was identified by a national survey of inmates and institutional assessment final report. May I know who conducted this national survey, Mr. President?
It was undertaken by the Supreme Court in coordination with the United Nations, Mr. President.
So this survey was conducted before 2003, because I understand the final
Yes,
report
sir.
was done in July 2003.
Yes, sir.
That means 12 years ago.
That's correct.
And 12 years ago, you say we are outdated, outmoded, and dilapidated correctional facilities. We have the existence of factional overlaps and diffusion in the conduct of corrections and restoration activities, lack of information technology and expertise, and the need to improve overall management capacity resources. 12 years ago, they
Yes,
said this. And where are we now, Mr. President, on these institutional key issues?
Basically, Mr. President, the findings made in this report of July 2003 are essentially still
Zero.
valid. Still, the findings are still there, except maybe on the lack of information technology and expertise, because I believe that Director Bukayo of the Bucor has also has manifested that they are implementing this single kapeta system. Tama ba?
Ano po ba yan?
Single kapeta system where they will now use computers or IT to they will computerize the database of each inmate. So maybe there is some progress on the third subject matter which I raised, which is lack of information technology and expertise.
Well, Thank you. That is expected, no? Considering the
Yes, yeah.
upsurge of technology, not only in our country but in the entire world. So the other three, if I listen and listen to the radio, television, watch television, and read the newspapers, we're square one.
Yes, sir. I think so.
All right.
Because the overlap is still there. The overlap of the functions and, of course, the dilapidated physical facilities are still there. The overall management capacity, the problem is still there. And last but not the least, the unattractive compensation, the benefits. They are still unattractive.
I'm sure your speech will be referred to the proper committee, and you will be conducting a hearing to this. No? And as a matter of fact, I expect your committee to handle this and to conduct a hearing. Perhaps we can also focus on the correction and rehabilitation functions of the overlaps that you are mentioning, like as you said, the Department of Justice, the ILG, the SWD, even local governments have mandates
Yes, sir.
to the management and supervision. No? And then again, we need not reassess because right now it's square one, as you said. The rehabilitation functions. No? This is where I would like to, on a personal note, I would like to focus on this. I understand the sports programs for rehabilitation purposes, health issue, okay po yun eh. Di ba? Pero pagdating dun sa katulad nga nung kanina, nabanggit ng ating majority leader tungkol dun sa may recording studio, nagre-recording, and they are, daig pa yung mga nasa labas ng kulungan. Kaya sila kinulong dahil pinipenalize sila eh. Ano? Pero hindi ko nakikita ang rehabilitation dun because, Mr. President, I understand these personalities that have been found to be in that situation. Eh, ang mga sentensya, life imprisonment eh. Reclusion perpetua. Anong nire-rehab natin sa reclusion perpetua? As I said, I want to understand. Like, example, kung 10 years, 12 years imprisonment ang sentensya mo, I understand kung mayroong rehabilitation purpose ang pagkukulong sa'yo at mayroong rehabilitation program. Dahil para paglabas mo, you will be, again, a productive member of society. Hindi po ba? Pero yung reclusion perpetua, life imprisonment, palagay natin, yung mga nag-commit ng mga heinous crimes, meron pa nga double life. Meron ganun eh. Lalo na pagka yung mga drug lords. Anong nire-rehab natin? Para saan?
Okay, number one is we have to accept that prisoners, although already finally convicted and are supposed to suffer the consequences of their acts, still have human rights. So the rehabilitative effect is that, you know, a human being should live in a society or in a place where he feels a constant improvement in himself. So maybe since prisoners na sila, not in their economic situation, but at least in his maybe in his outlook in life, in his to lessen his propensity for violence, and also number two, these prisoners interact with their fellow prisoners. So if these people have no chance of being given a pardon, interact with others who have a chance of being given a pardon, then maybe they will also be a positive influence on their fellow prisoners. And then number three is not all prisoners serving life imprisonment have no possibility of pardon. Some can be pardoned. So their pardon or parole or however we call it, but a release. So they should be ready. We should be ready to release them at any time, and they should be at their optimum or the best possible frame of mind when they are released. For
Right.
those who have the possibility of being released.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. Now, ang understanding ko, Mr. President, pagka ikaw ay sinintensyahan, kinumbik ka ng isang krimen, the reason you are jailed is because you are removed from society. You are being removed from society. Andun ka. Ngayon, you are removed from society. Nakakulong ka, katulad nito mga ito. And more especially yung mga hindi drug offenders. I don't mind drug offenders eh. The drug dealers, the big time drug dealers, no, yung mga drug lords na tinatawag. Katulad niyan, may nahuli sa loob ng kulungan sa kanila. Meron silang barel, meron silang mga high-powered firearms, meron silang droga. Nagdi-distribute hindi lang sa Muntinlupa, nagdi-distribute sa labas. As a matter of fact, the way I see the quantity of the drugs being manufactured, it's impossible that Muntinlupa or the National Bilibid prisons is their market. It's impossible. The output or the quantity is so huge that I'm sure the market is beyond the NBP and even beyond the Philippines. Sa laki, nung market na yun na binamanufacture na nahuhuli doon at meron pa siguro mga hindi pa nahuhuli. No? Okay, nakakulong, nahuli. Ano gagawin natin? Nakakulong.
Therefore, the law must still be applied, and because of due process, then they should be charged again.
Pero
Tama
ikukulong lang din.
Opo.
Kaya malakas ang loob na gawin eh.
Oo.
Doon lang sila eh.
So all the more na if you are a recidivist or a habitual offender, the pardoning power takes this into account. So parang another demerit ngayon kasi nga nakakulong na siya. But I think that's the best that we can do, apply the law since they also violated the law. But they should be tried first, no? So we follow the same long procedure in convicting them, just as which was observed when they were first convicted. So
yung po malungkot sa isang katulad ko na hindi masyadong naiintindihan yung sitwasyon eh as far as these criminals are concerned. Nakakulong na eh, so nahuli. Kukulong din.
Pero sir,
ang lalakas ng loob nila eh. Dahil nakakulong lang naman ako eh. Pag nahuli ko, dito rin ako eh.
that's correct.
Wala rin. Kaya malakas ang loob gawin eh. So, I think your committee should look into the possibility of something to discourage them. Kailangan magkaroon ng discouraging effect in the law. Para nakakulong ka na, mas lalo nang dapat perhaps you can look into the possibility of not only regional, as I have been saying this since I got back into the Senate. As a matter of fact, during the 10th Congress, we were discussing this already. I submitted a copy to the Senate President now, who was former Justice Secretary. I submitted to him a copy of the regional proposal. Perhaps baka merong isang dapat, aside from the regional, baka merong isang penal colony na ayaw nilang mapunta. Para wag sila magloko at wag na silang lumalapa dahil dito ka dadalhin. Ganun eh. Okay, sasabihin ng iba, paano yung human rights? I think you gave away your human rights when you committed a heinous crime.
Well,
diba? When you took the life of somebody.
Not necessarily, Mr. President, but we can still come up with that facility. Let us say a much feared facility. We can still come up with that and still respect their human rights. Kaya po yun. Kaya po yun. Ang ibig sabihin nun, sa facility na ito, may disiplina. Talagang didisiplinahin kayo rito.
Correct.
Klaro yung procedure. That can still be done and still respecting human rights.
Yan, that is a very good point, Mr. President. I will totally support that. Yung regional proposal, that, as I said, I have submitted before. The main reason, according to the research and the study, one of the main reasons is that, aside from the congestion, at saka yung mas madali, dalawa main reason eh. Isa, mamaya isa, tungkol sa pera isa eh. Yung una, ang mga preso daw, pag hindi na binibisita, doon nag-uumpisang nagluloko. Lahat yung mga member ng mga gang na yan at mga nagiging kasama ng mga gumagawa ng kabalbalan sa loob, yun yung mga hindi na dinadalaw. Pagka dinadalaw pa ng pamilya, lalo na yung bagong mga kulong, walang problema. Hindi nagkakaproblema. At sumusunod sa rehabilitation. Pero oras na hindi na dinadalaw, dyan daw nagiging mga gago eh. Ngayon, paano kung taga Sultan Kudarat, kung taga General Santos, yung pamilya, paano mo dadalawin yung nasa Muntinlupa kung wala ka namang hanap buhay, o kung may hanap buhay ka, hindi ka makaalis, wala kang pamasahe. Hindi na madadalaw yun. Baka once a year, hindi madalaw eh. But if you make it regional nga,
Yes, sir.
you resolve that issue, one of the main issues. And then, Mr. President, what is the size of Muntinlupa now, the National Bilibid Prison? How many hectares?
It's not at the tip of my fingertips, Mr. President.
Pero definitely huge.
Yes, yes.
Huge, Mr. President.
Ilan? We are still searching for the information, Mr. President.
All right. While you're searching for the information,
Ilang hectares area lang?
the idea is, Mr. President, and if your committee will look into this, that government sell this. Ang laki ng halaga niyan. Kapitbahay niyan, Ayala, Alabang, Mr. President. Alam mo naman ang presyo doon. Sa Alabang. In the area of Muntinlupa. How much money can government generate from this? Mag-uuna-unahan yung mga universidad if you make that instead into a university belt. At lalong tataas ang presyo nung area na yun.
We have the area, Mr. President,
Yes.
447 hectares.
447 hectares, billions of pesos, Mr. President, ang halaga. That is one of the main reasons. Sinasayang natin yung property ng gobyerno na yun sa ganun. Samantalang pag ginawa mo regional, and then you convert one island into an Alcatraz. Doon yung mga
Yes, yung mga
doon yung mga recidivists, saka mga
incorrigible,
drug lords, sa mga
incorrigible,
incorrigible.
yes, sir.
We don't need to bomb the island, we just have to put in a warden who has very strong arms. Mr. President.
How about this, Mr. President? How about selling the present National Bilibid area and then using the funds to transfer it to somewhere in Nueva Ecija? You think that would be a good idea?
Yes, but again, we do not resolve the problem of regionalization.
Yes, pero in the meantime, for example, sa first
Pwede.
step, because
Pwede.
actually that is, I think, the current plan as explained to me by the Bucor chief, pero I don't know how it will work, the details, because it's going to be a PPP. Somebody has to advance naman, because you cannot vacate immediately the premises until and unless the new premises are built already to transfer the prisoner. So the buyer pays and then takes possession after a lapse of a certain number of years, until the premises is completely abandoned and vacated.
Well, then again, Mr. President, your committee can look into
Yes,
this
yes,
the issue, and perhaps you can find a resolution and recommendation to the department concerned.
But I just stated it because I think that's the current plan. So at least we all know and we can think about it if it will work or not. If such a plan will work or not.
Di ba pwedeng isabay na rin yung isang area na ngayon pa lang doon na dadalhin yung mga, let's say, mga special drug cases.
Yes, sir. Especially
Lahat ng mga drug lord pag sumasama yung
especially if the premises will fetch a good amount. Then
Yes.
that means we can spare even some of the regional penal farms if that is our approach.
Yung paglalagyan, if we can do this, I will withdraw my proposal for death penalty for drug
For
high level drug
drug
traffickers.
trafficking, yes.
But if we can find a place where we can confine them, walang cell site, no communication whatsoever,
Right.
except the prison facilities only,
And visitation.
Oh. iba na yun. Yun,
Opo.
pwede yun.
Opo. So
Pwede
I think it can be done. And
Otherwise, you will have to support my bill.
it can be done that we will have a strict prison facility where human rights are still respected. It can be done.
I will look forward to that, Mr.
Yes, sir.
President.
Thank you.
I wish to thank the distinguished gentleman, the chairman of the Committee on Justice, and I will look forward into the hearings that you will be conducting based on this privileged speech that you have delivered, Mr. President. I'm sure the majority leader will be referring it to the proper committee. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. It was my pleasure being further educated about the subject matter.
Mr. President, I move that we refer the speech together with the interpellation to the Committee on Justice and Human Rights.
Any objection? Hearing none, so referred.
Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Wednesday, January 21, 2015.
Session is adjourned until 3 o'clock of Wednesday, January 21, 2015.